I'm going to take you on a little educational trip to Scotland now, where I think we might learn a thing or two about refugees, asylum seekers and illegal immigrants.
Starmer! Two-tier policing! Starmer!
If 1% of them are Hamas soldiers, England's not going to know what hit them.
Breaking Edinburgh at dusk. A man stabbed on Princes Street just steps from Waverley Station. Witnesses say 6 masked men speaking in a foreign language fled before police arrived. Hours later, Westminster confirmed a new transfer order. Hundreds of asylum seekers from Dover heading to a Glasgow hotel, part of the latest Channel surge. 500 arrivals in just 4 days. To Scotland, it wasn't coincidence. It was a message. They sent boats to do and knives to our doorsteps. By nightfall, candles turned to crowds and Scotland began to rise. At noon, the chamber was full, not of answers but avoidance. Nigel Farage rose from the benches, a sheet of paper in hand.
As a matter of national security, over the weekend, the legal immigrant from Iran, who we believe came by boat, was arrested in the north of England on serious charges of terrorism. Since the speech on Monday, 1,000 young, undocumented young males have crossed the English Channel.
Starmer didn't answer. He simply turned the page. No apology, no security update, no plan. The Treasury log released minutes later confirmed £7 million diverted from Scottish councils for migrant support operations. When pressed, a junior minister repeated the line that now defines Westminster's rule. London decides, you implement. That was the only answer Scotland received, and the last one it was willing to accept. From every road across Scotland, more than 200,000 people poured into George Square, silent at first. Then by midday, the city was no longer calm. No speeches, no banners, only flags held tight in the wind. Police lines formed across the steps of city chambers. Helmets down, bats drawn. A woman shouted, "Protect our streets!" And 1,000 voices answered. The square shook. At 1:17 p.m., the first glass broke. Within minutes, barriers fell. Traffic stopped on Union Street and Queen Street. In Renfrew, hotel entrances were sealed with fencing and police vans. 240 detained, 31 officers injured. Drone footage showed formation lines breaking, discipline collapsing in daylight. Police Scotland called it public tension under review. But everyone watching knew what it was. Not a protest, not yet a riot. The point where patience ends and obedience dies. George Square lay quiet under gray daylight. Barriers still standing from the night before. Police vans lined the avenues, their engines idling. Officers watching the windows above. The government called it calm restored. Scotland called it control. Government called it order restored. Scotland called it occupation. At 8:42 a.m., Police Scotland released the phrase cleared by Westminster, situation under control. But nothing was. Leaked Home Office logs showed £6 million authorized overnight for containment and perception management. Every communication from Hollywood to London was marked pending clearance. Even press briefings were screened by Downing Street before delivery. It was no longer policing. It was control. By midday, the resistance turned visible. Parents gathered outside 23 schools demanding protection after the stabbing that started it all. Veterans stood guard at council doors, their medals glinting in cold daylight. In Dundee, truckers parked 50 rigs across the ring road. In Aberdeen, shopkeepers nailed boards marked "We Remember 31st of October" over shattered windows. Starmer's ministers spoke of unity while another. £7 million was cut from Scottish welfare budgets to fund migrant placements. They called it balance. The people called it betrayal. For the first time in decades, Scotland wasn't asking London for answers. It was counting the cost and naming who sent the bill. Morning came with silence, but not peace. London began to control the story. News anchors were told to remain calm. The word riot vanished from headlines. Police checkpoints appeared on every Scottish highway. Buses were stopped. Phones inspected. The Home Office called it precaution. The people called it fear. South of the border, BBC presenters read the same script. In Glasgow, one refused. Her broadcast cut mid-sentence. That silence spoke louder than any report. At 10 a.m., Starmer met Police Scotland behind closed doors. 2 more hotels were approved for asylum housing in Perth and Inverness. No notice, no vote. He thought control with strength, but silence can be louder than power. By noon, workers walked off sites. Students left classrooms. No slogans, no shouts, only stares. And in those eyes, something had shifted. It was no longer rage. It was refusal. In Glasgow, the barricades rose higher, every station guarded, every bridge manned. The government said it was for public safety, but no one believed it anymore. At 1 hour, a mother in Dundee stood on her doorstep, holding a sign that read, "Protect our children." By evening, hundreds of windows carried the same words. At 5:30, veterans marched again through George Square. No chance, just footsteps. Old men with medals, young men with dust on their boots. The government called them extremists. They called themselves fathers. When police moved in to clear the crowd, one officer stepped aside and whispered, "Not today." The clip was deleted but spread everywhere. 40 million views, 40 million people remembering what loyalty means. London ruled by fear, but fear had changed size. At dawn, Scotland woke to headlines written in London. Order restored. Communities united. But outside, everyone knew it was a lie. Shops stayed shut, flags hung at half-mast. Bus stops carried a new poster. "We serve the people." The message spread faster than any law. Farmers joined factory workers. Church bells rang for the first time in weeks. Not for mourning, but for memory. In Aberdeen, 3,000 dot workers refused to unload government cargo. If London can't feed our families, they said it won't feed itself. That night, a Hollywood reporter published numbers the BBC had buried. £4 million cut in 3 days for emergency asylum housing. Then it became clear this was never about migration. It was about silence. Scotland wasn't rebelling. It was remembering who it was. By dusk, London began to panic. Internet speeds dropped across the nation. Post vanished within minutes. The Home Office blamed technical faults. Everyone knew better. People went back to paper and ink. Flyers, notes, word of mouth. Bus drivers carried letters between towns. Churches opened their doors for those who feared to speak. No leaders, no slogans, only truth. At 9 p.m., a clip spread online. A police officer removed his helmet and faced the crowd. "We spire, we serve the people," he said, "not the protocol." The video was deleted, but it was too late. 50 million views, 50 million hearts awake. Scotland had run out of patience. London had run out of control. The next morning, the markets opened in chaos. The pound fell 6%. Energy stocks crashed. European investors froze their trades. Inside Parliament, Starr called an emergency session. Half the seats were empty. The rest sat silent. At 2 an advisor whispered, "Prime Minister, Scotland is gone." He meant politically. It sounded like a eulogy. Outside Westminster, hundreds stood in the rain. No chants, no banners, just folded flags held to their chests. One voice shouted, "We are Britain, not your border." No one stopped him. That night, reports showed hundreds of civil servants in Edinburgh, Aberdeen, and Perth had resigned. They weren't protesting. They were leaving. For the first time, London didn't face rebellion. It faced abandonment. Dawn came soft and wet. No sirens, no smoke, only rain on rooftops. People swept glass from the streets, cleared barricades, reopened shops. White cloths hung from windows across Edinburgh, not as surrender but as peace. At Hollywood, children laid flowers where the first march began. On every note was the same line for Scotland, for everyone. By noon, the Union flag hung still at half-mast. No speeches, no anthem, only silence, heavy and human. London watched. It could not censor that. What began with one attack had become a lesson. Unity without respect is domination. The nation stood between forgiveness and fury. And for the first time in generations, truth did not need to shout. It had come home. This is Brit News. If you stand for truth, subscribe because this story isn't ending, it's beginning. Thank you for watching. Stay thoughtful, stay aware, and take care of one